All right, our final speaker of the day. Our final speaker of the day is a close personal friend. And you see many of the speakers today are close personal friends. But this is a new friend, if you will. Because everyone else you saw, we've been together for 20 plus years. So this is my new friend, all right, my new friend. I bumped into Mike Kramer from McDonald's basically at a very interesting meeting. It was called Inform. All right, and this is and it's got operations research and management science and all this other type of stuff. But he gave this talk about what they're doing in the innovation space at McDonald's, and I was in awe. I mean, that doesn't happen to me. I mean, there was so much about McDonald's I didn't know. I mean, you think you know about McDonald's, all right, but you probably don't, right? So it's fascinating. We all kind of know it, but we don't. But it's an amazing organization. It has amazing executives. It has an amazing market, but it's also very, very well managed. All right, because it's art and science and food. Oh my God, it doesn't get any better than that. Right? So we've asked Michael to come in and talk to us about some of the interesting things that they're doing in there, because it has a unique organization chart. It has unique complexities, right? Because we talk about some of the structure, I think, and maybe some of the fact that you have these things called franchisees who are kind of important in your world, And also they do a whole lot of predicting the future, because they have to sell their vision of the future every day. Oh, are we coming up here? Oh, I see something. There we go.
Okay, good. That's my kids. All right. I start there. I start there.
There we go.
All right. Actually, it's an important place to start for me because I believe in sharing our personal biases, and that's my personal bias. Okay, that's one of the reasons I work. Thank you, Gordon. It's always a pleasure to be here. I learned so much, and I like that. I apologize because today was supposed to be my day off, and I was going to be focused on here, but we have a pretty important visitor on Wednesday, and so I've been on email most of the day, unfortunately. So I apologize if that was distracting anybody. Okay, so when I saw what we were talking about, I thought, okay, McDonald's, we use the cloud. I want to share with you how we're using it. But it's also important to talk about innovation and how we do that, the context of it, okay? Because it's an enabler of innovation. Okay? Innovation is more important than the cloud, so to speak. Okay? But even more important than innovation is basically business success. So we keep it in that hierarchy all the time, and I want to make sure I make that clear, and you're going to see some things come out from here. So I'm going to talk to you about innovation, and I think I should start by just clarifying some things. Okay, so you all have experienced McDonald's, okay, but I want to share with you some things you may not have experienced. So first of all, what's our organization? So yes, we have 34,000 restaurants in 119 different markets. We have 7 markets that make up the majority of those restaurants, about 25,000. Okay, we call it the top 7. Okay? And so we do a lot of our work focused on them. Okay, so if you're in the Philippines, we don't pay much attention to you. Okay? We had to, because we had to get focused, and we were finding that if we were too dispersed, we lost sight of the core. The core is very important to us. The core is basically you. It's we rank things in terms of not just how many restaurants, but how many customers. Okay, so we have to make sure the customer experience is a consistent one, a branded one that you want to come back to. That's our critical need. Okay, it's very difficult to do that, be consistent across so many different countries where there's different cultural norms. So it's been fascinating for me to get involved with this because I've learned about what fast is in Germany or in Japan compared to the US. They're very different things, okay? And we learn that from the customer's perspective. So we have 4 areas of the world: North America, Latin America, Europe, and everything else we call Asia, Pacific, Middle East, Africa, APMEA for short. There's a president of each of those areas. They're responsible for protecting the brand image, which is their first obligation, and then to drive the business, okay, as well as to secure the employee commitment and satisfaction. Okay, McDonald's as a system is made up of 3 parts, and those 3 parts basically are: we have suppliers, We have McDonald's corporate, and we have the owner-operators, or franchisees. We call that the three-legged stool. That's what Ray Kroc did when he started the company. He shook hands with a supplier and basically the franchisee, and he was the corporation. And he started that little pyramid, and it's grown ever since. And it's grown through scale. For a long, long time, it was just grow restaurants, okay? Until eventually we saturated the market. So, for example, in the US, we saturated the market, and we learned that not by looking forward, we learned it by saturating it, oversaturating it, and then scaling back, okay? So we've learned the lesson, and we're going to make sure we don't do it in other markets. But Europe, for the most part, and the United States are saturated in a healthy way. Latin America has a lot of opportunity, but economically it's not the right time, okay? Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa, great opportunity, and now's the time. Hence, we're investing there. So we're going to talk about solutions, which is something else I'm going to talk to you about because it's part of my role. It makes a difference in what you're going to invest your money in. Okay? So if you're in China, you build restaurants because there's so much opportunity there, you just have to be out there. And we know that game really, really well. We're probably the best at it. Okay? So build a whole bunch of restaurants. Okay? That's their game. That's their growth strategy. However, in the United States, it's very different. It's not grow restaurants. And we'll talk a little bit about how we make decisions, we call it solution sequencing, for each of these top markets because they have different growth strategies, different opportunities, organic opportunities, okay? And things like the cloud, they cut across that. And sometimes it's very easy to deal with those, and sometimes it's difficult. As you all know from an IT perspective, valuing an enabler can be very difficult, okay? So now, what's my role? So I sit inside of a group called the Restaurant Solutions Group. Okay? So there's 4 presidents in their area of the world. They run the business. Okay? Then you have us other people that are at the center. Okay? Oak Brook, just outside of Chicago, is the global headquarters. And there's a division called Restaurant Solutions Group. So there's the chief restaurant officer. His name is Jeff Stratton. He reports directly to Jim Skinner. Okay? And now Don Thompson, who's our new COO. And basically, he's in charge of the consolidated solutions. Think of it like we're an internal consulting group that provides solutions for the areas of the world, okay, in a leveraged fashion. That takes 3 forms. Number 1 is there's a group that handles the practices within the restaurant. We call that operations, okay? So the procedures, okay, the guidelines, how we want to get it done, and the training for those things. That all fits in one department, okay? Another department is the real estate and the construction group, okay? Now McDonald's owns all the real estate and we own all the buildings, but we do not own what's inside them. So if you're an owner-operator, you have to buy that toaster. And if I come back to you, like if you have a car, and I came to you, and let's say your car is 3 years old, right? And I want to sell you a new car. My car is fine. You know, I don't mind getting a new car, but I've got life left on my car. I want to keep it 7 years. It's a better payback. Well, the market, that president and his leadership team is going to try to convince you it's a good time to upgrade, okay? So I'm removed from that direct sell. I do not deal with the owner-operators. I deal with the markets, okay? They're my clients. Innovation is the 3rd group inside of RSG, and our job basically is to fill the innovation pipeline with things that are relevant, okay, to each of those markets. Hopefully universal, because there's scale in that, right? And impactful, okay? So hit all 3 of those things, all right? So, I should probably also tell you, so I'm in charge of ops research at McDonald's. It's 5 years old. I was brought in from the outside. I was working with a startup company, and the client was McDonald's, and that went pretty well. And so we, the guys I met during that time frame, Ken Koziel was one of the key guys from the supply chain. He took over innovation. Innovation used to be equipment development at McDonald's, okay, just the toasters and the ovens and things. Ken had wrote a very powerful white paper and said, we're missing a big opportunity to look at this holistically as a system and to leverage and synergize this system for innovation. And he did such a great job, he got the job, so he's in charge of innovation, okay? He's our innovation officer. And so he asked me to come on board to start up the ops research discipline at McDonald's. So we're housed inside of innovation, and for a while that was 3 years out. That's what innovation's horizon was, okay? We've shifted in the last year, year and a half, so now we're 18 months and out. And ops research has actually shifted so that we are from today to the future, which is a really exciting place, except we just can't keep up with our demand. So, having said that, I want to share with you the specifics of how we're using the cloud. Okay, so here's our situation. Most of our top 7 markets rely very heavily on the drive-through. Okay? Now I'm going to try to make this as relevant to your experiences as possible. Well, that business, like for example in the United States, 67% of our sales and about 70% of our throughput, our actual PCs, transactions, are done through the drive-through, okay? And it's critical that we maximize that throughput and we make sure that we're going to continue to grow the business, because we project or forecast that because of its convenience, more customers will want to use it, okay? So we have to make sure we can compensate for that, okay? The drive-through system is actually composed of several key factors, and we look at this as a system, okay? So we would not improve one without knowledge of the interaction of everything else. And we're really pretty good at that, okay? We learned our lesson the hard way through many years of improving one piece and not getting our money out of it. And you know who taught us this lesson? The owner-operators, because they bought it, okay? And we finally heard, listened, learned, so now we treat everything like this. So the configuration of the lot, and then the drive-through design, which is broken down into an order point of, you can have a single order point with this speaker system there, or you can have a tandem, or you can have a side-by-side. You've probably experienced different ones. The stack of cars between every touch point that you go to, whether it's ordering, then the cash booth and the present booth, how many cars in between there. The booth designs themselves, and then we get into the amount of labor that we put into the restaurant and the positioning of them, okay? The information systems, you may not know it, but when we go to a side-by-side layout, okay, well, we're enabling you to move quickly because the person in front of you may have a big order, right? We can't help that. We want you to have a big order, but we want you with a small order to be able to get around them, okay? Well, that presents a problem for us because now you're out of sequence, okay? So we take your photograph, your car's photograph, and we link that specifically so at the time of presentation where someone is heads down working very fast, we don't mess it up, okay? Hence, we need that, okay? So there's a bit of science in this system that goes on throughout all of the drive-through designs, okay? Then the last part, and I want to emphasize this because it's our learning, so you're going to hear me talk a lot about this, and I like this science. It's behavior, okay? And we actually are looking at the behavior of our crew, and that's not a derogatory term for us, by the way. Someone asked me that in another presentation. We say that lovingly. It's like the crew, you know? I don't know if you guys get that or not, but you know, so some people say you should call them employees, and it's like, no, we all huddle together. We're the crew, you know? We're together. And then the other is the customer, okay? So having known all of those factors and having done a lot of different analysis, we know that there are ways to optimize those things, okay? And what we can tell you is that we can really reduce our need for capital investment if we can harness the power of our crew behavior, okay? And that's what we're going to go after, okay? That's what we're going after, and that's what the cloud is helping us to do. So, I've talked about some of these key systems and behaviors. I want to point out a couple things to you. So, like, I don't know how many people will recognize all of the scientific nuances and engineering nuances in this, okay? But a couple things here. This little Y, okay, it's a perfect Y. You probably will go up to some drive-through McDonald's, and what you're going to see is something that's a skewed Y, okay? Well, I can tell you that you and or the customers, your partners in crime around you, will not move past the inner lane if the Y isn't perfect, okay? And you know what that does to us? We've invested in 2 order points that we want to use, and you don't use the outside one, but 20 to 25% of the time. So that's a bad investment. And you know what? The customer's behavior aggravates the other customers. So we have to design for that, okay? So this is very important. The physical curve, the distances, all of those things are very specific for us because your behavior changes with that. We have to have visibility of that from far away. Why? Because you don't look at the sign. Okay? I get it. I don't either. Okay? In fact, we're learning something very difficult and yet profound is all of us in our cars, especially given the fact that we have so many opportunities for stimulus, we're distracted. We are no longer, we're in our own cube. We're in our own world. Okay? And we see it on our lots a lot. But we also see it on the roads because we study traffic. Okay? And what's happening to us is, it's our own little world. Okay? And add that to like the Gen Y kind of thing, and it's a scary thought because, you know, basically people aren't behaving the same way. Okay? That behavior is difficult for us because we want it to flow for our business and for our customers. But if the customers are offering up too much variation in and of themselves, we have to design around that. So we're investing more money in these because you don't notice the signs. Okay? Nor do I. It's just what's happening to us all. We're stimulated. Okay? Cell phone, music, whatever it might be. You know, there's other things coming on the forefront. Okay? So there's a lot of nuance in this design, and I want you to know that it's for behavioral reasons. Okay? Now, yes?
There was an owner-operator in Denver, I think, owned a bunch of restaurants, McDonald's restaurants, that was also taking that to the point of actually taking the photographs and deciding what lane one should go in based on how they were profiled. Yeah. So if you were in there with 6 kids in your car, you figure they're going to take all day to figure out what they want. And if you were in there as an individual, you figure you're going to know what you want by the time you get there. They're going to route you to a different location. McDonald's had a film on that maybe 7 or 8 years ago that they were using to sort of promote innovation. I just wondered whether that ever got to corporate or apparently not.
No, I think, I'm not familiar with that one. I know that we've done several different experiments on how we would segregate. And what's interesting is, so the pattern is unpredictable, okay? And so if you have a burst of cars where it's all single orders, okay? That happens. Then it's like, well, you want them to use it this one way, which everybody go after, okay? And then if it's a complex order, that's what we call it, you know, a large group size order, it's like, well, so from a design perspective, if we get that out of the way of the fastest flow, and the fastest flow could potentially be the inner lane, okay, then ultimately that's something you have to guide people to.
Yeah.
But the people don't behave that way. Unfortunately, the percentage of people that would go to the shorter line anyway overrules the, you know, then we talk about, do we want a physical gate? No, we don't want that. So ultimately, we try to design for robustness under those conditions, okay? And so that's where we end up landing. But I'm not familiar with that photograph specifically. Okay, so I am going to share with you some things, and I thought what could be fun is I want to demonstrate a little bit of the work that I do and how you experience it, okay? So there's hundreds of combinations here. Okay? And you don't probably see them, and that's fine. So what we have to do is we have to apply design of experiments to make sense of them, okay? Because I have to be relevant to those market conditions, okay, which means different customer behavior, relevant to crew, okay? And we ultimately have to find out what's the best path of investment. So I've already told you that we can harness great power from the crew. Well, I want to prove it to you, okay? So what I'm going to show you is, this is a tool that we use internally, okay? Happens to be animated because we had to prove, this is part of the journey about this research. See, McDonald's is not an organically, analytically oriented company. It's a wisdom-based company, okay? People have been there 25 years, and they know the restaurants. They're behavioral scientists, but they don't know it, you know? And they know if I put in X, I'm going to get Y. They know that. They just haven't experienced all the different conditions, okay? So we're applying the science to their wisdom, and it's forming a great synergy. It's a lot of fun. But for me to convince them that the design that they put in 10 years ago in the US is not the right design to put in Japan right now, I have to show them, they have to experience it. That's how they learn. So I'm going to have you experience something, okay? Just take a second. All right, so this is a tool that we use. I have to customize it for each market, okay? And it's an experimentally based tool, just to show you a few of the different factors, okay? So I talked about order points, okay? So a single order point is if you go up and there's one COD, right? Versus a tandem or side by side. I'll just leave it at single, okay? We have different booth configurations. Some are ones you've seen, some you have never seen because they're in prototype, okay? So if I were to say a 2-booth optimized, that means basically the booths are spread apart so that a car can fit in between, which is very important because we want to clear the cash booth, right? But it takes a long time sometimes to prepare large orders, so there's more chance of that point being blocked, okay? And then I can change my stack height, and I definitely can change the conditions of the day part, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. You order different things and different meal sizes there, and we found that the weekend and the weekday are very different, okay? So those are all set in here, and I can also change the POS system. By the way, we do video analysis to identify what's the likelihood of a crew person being able to take an order faster and more accurate, and then their inherent friendliness with the consumer if we have one system versus another. So we inform this tool with a lot of video analysis, okay? That's sort of how it works. Okay, so all I'm going to do here is add some people, and I'm going to give them a position. Okay, this is sort of I am now assigning them tasks within the restaurant, okay? And I am going to run this, and you're going to see the cars flow, okay? Now, sorry. Okay, so in this configuration, it's a single order point. There's our cash booth, there's our present booth, okay? I put 120 cars of demand. There's 120 cars that want to get through our lot, okay? There's more traffic on the road, obviously, okay? This dashboard tells me my stats, okay? So far, this is going to run, by the way, 1 business hour. It'll take about 45 seconds. I can run it in 2 seconds if I want, but you wouldn't get the power up, right? So anyway, so 120 cars. I want to see how many I'm going to complete, okay? And then of that, what I want to do is identify the customer's experience. So in drive-through, we're focused on accuracy, friendliness, and the total experience time is what we call it. We have a threshold for that, okay? So we completed 116 cars. And as you can see, we have 4 cars that are what we would call work in process, right? They don't count until they leave that point, okay? So this is a pretty good result, okay? Of those, we have pretty high, 100% were fast enough, 100% were friendly, and 92% were accurate. And that was inherent to this, the complexities of the order and the probability that with that POS system, they're going to get some of them wrong, okay? So 92% of the customers got what we wanted them to get. That's good, okay? We had no drive-offs. We have behavioral settings in here that allow us to understand your threshold for how long you will wait. Again, I have to study that, okay? So I do the research and I come up with a probabilistic equation, put it in here so that therefore I can say, hey, what is your likelihood of driving off and how much money is that worth? That's how we value things, okay? So, as an example, I just ran that. Now I want to change something, okay? I have to go back to this beginning. But it's very important that I keep the same settings because I don't want to change it. I don't want to change too many variables at once. Otherwise, you would appropriately challenge what. I'm sorry, I had 4 people, not 5 people. You would appropriately say, well, how do you know that's what made the difference, right? So this is how we make sure we're doing the proper design of experiments. Okay, so these are all subsettings, another layer down here, okay? I talked about the drive-off percentages and things that are going on, okay? Well, one of the things that we know is that if I were to, our approximate numbers are, you'll wait about 6 minutes and then half of you will drive off, okay? So that is one behavioral element. And the other is that when it comes to some of the interaction times, do that there, our crew have a different level of variation And so I've changed two things, so I cheated a little bit, okay? What I've done is I focused on behavior, okay? And I did that because I want to give you a wow, okay? But ultimately, I didn't change the physical design, okay? It's exactly the same design. It's the same demand quantity, okay? I changed your threshold for pain, okay? How long you'll wait, okay? So only if cars back up here from this order point and wait 6 minutes is there a 50% chance they'll leave, okay? But I also changed the speed upon which we're doing some order taking, okay? Now, all of a sudden, see down here, I've lost one car. This goes very fast, so you don't necessarily see it, okay? So I got 114 out of the 120, okay? I only lost physically one car, okay? And that was worth $3.59 to me, okay? But this is an example of what we will do. I've just done 2 experiments. For this kind of work, I would probably do about 1 million, okay? Obviously, I don't use this tool the way I'm doing it to do 1 million, okay? But
you got 3% more accuracy. Will you trade off people driving off for accuracy?
that's a great question, because thank you for seeing that and asking it. The answer is sometimes. No, actually, part of the work that I'm commissioned to do now, which is more on a global basis, is the projection of behavior over time. So we believe that by giving someone we call it capable visit, fast, accurate, friendly, fresh, and clean. But in the drive-through, clean isn't there as much, so it depends on where you are. But those are the attributes. If we give you those things, we believe, sincerely, faith, that you'll come back more, okay? But what I've been challenged to do is to quantify that financially. So at what level do I take that risk? So we're running a series of experiments like this just to get the what-ifs and those sensitivities, those relationships. More importantly, we're getting ethnographic information from the different markets to understand what they actually do behaviorally in making their decisions. And we know from intercepts and the dialogue that, like, all of you will say, hey, that last time I went to that store, it really stunk, right? And a certain percentage of you will not go back to that store after one bad visit, okay? And then others have a little more tolerance, right? But after 3 visits, I'm done. Now, they might be done with McDonald's for 6 months or a year, you know? So we have some information on that. But that's information that's perception, okay? It's what people have told us, and we trust it to a degree. We like to augment that with the actual data as much as we can, as well as so for example, we know how many customers we served, okay? I can analyze the traffic patterns, and there's a probability that there's so much new traffic on that road versus non-new traffic. And so we can do a pretty good regression and identify what's the probability that we're getting lost or not, okay? And then the other side is we do the ethnographic research to identify what is the actual behavior, okay? And you can see a lot of the behavior, okay? We'll follow people do, the pure ethnographic is we actually ride with people, go back to their home and understand their lifestyles and things like that. It's the combination of all those things together as a portfolio that give me confidence. Any one of them is wrong to some degree. So, but it's an ongoing thing, especially when we have to go to different markets to do it. Okay. So, I basically have demonstrated that to you. I hope you like that. So, what we are really identifying here is what's the value of these things. And to give you an example here, under actual behavioral conditions, so let me jump back here so I can see it. It's a little out of focus, I'm sorry. That's a little better. Okay, so we basically got 106 down here, we got 116 down here, right? So red is bad, green is good, right? I lost no customers here, I lost some customers here. This is based on actual behavior and the variation that we see, okay, compared to what we would consider to be our ideal, realistic behavior. Okay, so not only is the mode or the mean a little tighter, there's less variation in it. Okay, and so that leads us to a really compelling question. Okay, so we can design physically, okay, for peak conditions, right? Lunchtime a lot is peak, but also actually breakfast for us now. We have the highest drive-through count at breakfast. But they're simpler orders. So they take less time to typically order and less time to prepare. So that flows pretty well, okay?
You have much better coffee.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, we do, thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Others just suck it up, they want coupons.
Hey, for that, I'll give them a coupon. That's it. So do we design for the peak or the hardest, the most complex? Dinner, big orders, a lot of customization at dinner. You know, you want it your way kind of thing. It's like, right, and that's fine. Or do we design it for the majority of our operating hours? Okay. Well, there's a financial response to each of those, okay? And I'm responsible for helping to provide that. But there's risk associated with each of them, okay? And ultimately, when you bucket them up and you say, well, okay, so let's say we did all of them independently and treated them as options. There's some minimal cost associated with the infrastructure, the design, okay? So what we have to do is understand the relationship of the physical design investment versus the behavioral design investment. I want a different behavior. If I can get that behavior, it's worth so much to me. What I demonstrated before was a difference in behavior. It was worth quite a bit, okay? It's worth, you know, this is basically lost sales here is, I think it's $37 or something like that. That's probably right. Okay, think of that as, that's 1 hour. Okay? These conditions, there's 12,400 stores in the United States that have drive-thrus. Half of them, roughly, have this condition every day. Okay? So let's just say 6,000 restaurants. Every day will get $35, $40 more. Okay? If we just change that behavior. See, that's the power of McDonald's. We're a penny profit business, you know? We're about inches and seconds and pennies. It's doing it in scale. That's a lot of money. You know what I mean? Exactly. So it's like, hey, okay, how do we make that happen? Okay? And what's the easiest and the fastest to scale? So, of course, we want that behavior. But how do we get it? What we can tell you is we have a constraint. And the constraint is adaptability. Because we have different conditions, and they're real, and they happen all the time, what we really want our crew to do is to adapt to them. So if I don't have a really high arrival rate, I want the crew not to be in a rush, right? I want them to be really friendly. You know, I want them to cater to your needs more, you know? That's great. But if it is a rush, I need them to change and be a little more succinct, okay? And there's the right ways to do that. Well, historically, our guidelines have tended to be static, okay? And behavior tends to be habitual. So this is a really simple diagram, but it's like, okay, so we have a guideline. We publish it to everybody in the market, right? And then they have some conditions that they actually experience, okay? They had rude customers, which we have quite a few, actually. Aggressive, we call them, all right?
That's so non-judgmental. Look, they're aggressive. Why? Let go. Where am I trying? Where am I trying?
So they followed the guideline, and basically they either had a good or a bad experience, okay? If they had a good experience, they form a habit. And they're going to stick with that habit. The bad experience, they will avoid that. Simple, okay? What's wrong with this? The problem is the conditions come after the guideline.
Right.
So, for us, it's like we need conditions-based guidelines, and we don't have them, so we're working on them, okay? They're much more, this is the way you do it. But that's not real for us, okay? So, with that, now we know what the optimum positioning and behavior is, but it is conditional. And now how do we inform, develop, and maintain that behavior? Maintaining it, sustaining it, that's really hard, okay? And so we found the insight, okay? And I can't show you the whole process of getting here because we hold that very proprietary. But I can tell you that the insight is we had to make it a competition. That's what we did. It didn't work by staying within a restaurant and saying, okay, we want you to be this way. They didn't sustain it. They did it for a week or two, but then they stopped. Only when we opened it up and made it across restaurants and made it a competition where my restaurant's competing with the 5 or 6 or 20 in my patch, is what we call it, did it sustain? Okay? That's the insight for us. All right? So we're going to leverage that. Because if we can get behavioral change to this degree, it's a great investment. Right? And this is just one place we've started. Okay? So that's where we're within restaurant with guidelines, standards, and timers. You've probably seen our timers, right? I don't know how much that changed your experience, but I'll stop at that. To across restaurants, we still have guidelines, more conditionally based standards, okay? Timers and a competitive dashboard. So it's hard to read, but so our timers look better. But also in here, this basically is a dashboard that has your restaurant compared to the others, and they're in a ranked order. Who's doing the best right now? And so basically you compete to be the best. And it really is working for us. Okay? Now, how does this tie back into the cloud? Well, we couldn't do this. Each red dot is like a restaurant in an area. Well, we don't have the infrastructure. We couldn't do it. We were come up, report your sales, report your labor stats. That's it. Okay? We needed it to be working so that in the 5-minute increments, we're accumulating that data and reporting it back down. Okay? So it was an application that drove us to this, right? And then I won't go through all the details here, but that's the aha. And without this, we wouldn't be getting this behavior. The behavior is what we value. Okay? This is an enabler. Okay? If this was free, or if we didn't need it, we wouldn't want it. Okay? But we have to have it, and we're fine with it. Okay? But that's how we treat it. Okay? Now, this is an example of then some of the byproducts that are going on. So this is a diagnostic report that would be used by the manager of the restaurant. So this is not what the employees see. They see something different. It's a lot more fun. It's like, hey, where am I in my rankings? That's pretty much all they need to get the motivating behavior. But behind the scenes, there's actually quite a bit of science as to how they would get, sorry if I'm in your way, so how would they make sure that they maintain it. And so I won't go through all the details, but basically there's a bunch of key metrics here, and we want this thing to look green, right? Yes?
Do you have other incentives other than just the rankings, other monetary rewards?
No.
No, just purely the rankings?
Yep. Just be the best. Yep. We shy away from that. The one thing I will tell you though is we have, every 2 years we have a competition, we have a convention. It's always held down in Orlando. So there'll be about 18 to 20,000 McDonald's only people at that convention. And as a special reward for recognition, those that do really well in customer service are recognized in front of everybody there. That's a big deal. And then annually, there are annual conventions at a little lower level where the same thing happens. Okay, so they're given acknowledgement and rewards. Okay, but not really a financial side of it. Okay, so this is the pre. So I'm just going to go. Boop, there's post. Okay, and all I want to say is over here. These are the big ones. Okay, so it's like if I go, oh, red, green, red, green. Look, it's getting better. Okay, good. So you don't need to know all the details. It's better, okay? This is our proof. Now, this was in the field. This happened to be in Australia. That's where it was tested, okay? They have a high drive-through percentage. They have good conditions for it, and they're a very innovative culture, okay? So we're doing a similar test in other cultures. We believe in experimentation. We can only do so much in our laboratory because we have an operating lab, okay? We'll bring customers in. We have crew. We have 3 operating kitchens. And we have the simulations. We have a lot of stuff, but it doesn't give us the real-world experiences because we control for variables there, and we have to let the variables be the variables out in this real world. So this is what we do, okay? But as a marketplace, these are some of our key KPIs, key performance indicators. That last one is the total experience time, and this is what percentage of the customers were meeting it, okay? And so ultimately, it's all positive improvement for us. If it's green in the beginning, that means we were meeting our goal, right? And if it's better green, right, versus if it's red, it's bad, and orange, it's okay, you get it, okay? So this is the proof for us that it's all working. Okay? I'm conscious of my time, okay? So I have a couple other things to talk to you about, and then we can talk questions or whatever. So One is to talk about McDonald's. So I know I haven't told you too much about our innovation space and what we do. We're very proud of it. It's its own presentation, but what I want to convey to you is that about 5 years ago, and we've had a series of presidents, as you may know, and CEOs, okay? It's been an interesting, difficult journey. The change fundamentally in the business from 15 or 20 years ago is philosophy, okay? And second is leadership, okay? The board's different, the philosophy's different, and the leadership of the company is different. And I can tell you, I worked as a startup at a startup company that went well, and McDonald's was a client. And I remember one day someone said, "Would you like to work at McDonald's?" I said, "Hell no," because it was 15 years ago, you know. I'm glad I work at McDonald's because there's a lot of really positive things that go on behind the scenes that a lot of you don't get exposure to, okay? I'm going to talk about those in a minute, but one of the key things for me personally is the mantra is better, not just bigger. So we're getting bigger in China, but that's not what we're after anymore, okay? That's not the growth strategy, and it's not the philosophy, okay? We're continuing to apply science, and it's a neat mixture, okay? So it's this behavioral science that's really powerful. We want to understand it more. There's a lot of predictive work going on. I'm in charge of sort of experimenting or innovating in new methods, new sciences, which I love that part of my job. So I'm spending a lot of time now with some experts in predictive analytics and how we apply that, but in a real world way, okay? But we want to predict behavior, okay? Which is interesting because there's a lot of nuances there. And that's behavior of our owner-operators, it's behavior of our crew, it's behavior of the customers, and understanding the factors on those, and so on and so forth. Of course, decision analysis, and then risk analysis. Probably one of the reasons I was asking those questions, because there's a real science here too, and I see this science really evolving fast. Because of the deluge of data that we all have, okay, it's all around us, and the sophistication of new algorithms, and the ability to synthesize different kinds of information today, there's a new risk analysis methodology that's brewing. You know, and I'm trying to stay up to speed with it. And then we have created the beginnings of an experimentally designed experimental design culture, where at one point for us it was go put it in the ground and make sure that it works. And in our environment in innovation, we are allowed to fail. Okay, we have the term fail forward, fail fast. Okay, but let me be really clear about that. Okay, that just means basically we're allowed to learn, right? But we're not allowed to relearn. I mean, like, I don't do the same thing twice and fail. I mean, that's not allowed. And when I'm outside of innovation and I'm in a market, okay, they're not allowed to fail. I mean, they're not allowed to just, oh, let's go try it. Business isn't like that for us. Okay, so it's in this protected environment we're allowed to do that. I really enjoy that. But it's not like it's without pressure. You know, you got to get smarter. That's really what they're saying. Get smarter. Learn from that last one. Get smarter, get smarter, get smarter. That's really what the quest is, which is cool. You know, but you got to process a lot, and we're adding a lot more factors. What's really neat about the last 5 years for me is I know so much about McDonald's because I know it from so many different points of view that we've ultimately said the Innovation Center is a really cool incubator as a side. Come work 3 years in the Innovation Center. You'll know a lot about the business, you know, and then go back out and do your thing, you know. So we've started that up. All right. So I'm going to move on to that. I had one. Based on the conversations earlier, I decided to add this in. So 2 closing thought slides. And the one here talks about innovation as a process, and I wanted to address some of the dialogue that was going on. And I wanted to share with you the experience that we had. Okay, so 5-6 years ago, innovation took on a new face because there was a new leader, Ken Koziol. And he basically said, all right, so instead of it just being about making really good equipment that can be leveraged across the world, it's a whole system, okay? So when we do innovations, we have customer experience, we have design, we have employee experience, we have information systems. All of those things that I said make up the system. They're all going on there, okay? We have food scientists, we have this neat group that all attack it, okay? And believe me, we fight, right? We do, we fight. The interesting thing that happened with that was we created a means by which to harvest ideas. Okay? And a lot of dialogue has gone on regarding clouds and other things about harvesting ideas. Okay? With that, you need a way to process them. So we created an innovation processing engine. Okay? That's what happened starting 6 years ago for the last 3-4 years. And as a result of that, we created so much inventory in the innovation pipeline that the markets could not deploy it. Okay? Because in our world, here's another way of sort of looking at it, it's like there's certain time ratios. So the time for us to do this part of the process is X, and the time over here is 4X. So we fed the pipe, and we jammed the pipe, and we created inventory. We created waste. We were spending the company's money, and we shouldn't have been, right? Because you can't use inventory, right? You want just-in-time inventory, right? We already learned all that last week. So be careful of that, because with the excitement of being able to harvest, okay? And then I've already heard people talk about the need for processing. You got to filter, you got to, right? Well, keep in mind what your rate of deployment is, okay? And that is relative to how many resources they have out there that can do it. In our world, it's I got to get the owner-operators to buy into it, to actually buy the stuff. And then we have so much scale on our end. You know, so if I wanted to, simple example, if I want to put in a brand new toaster at McDonald's in the United States only, okay? This is going to sound wild, okay? If I said I want all of the stainless steel to do that so I could implement it in 1 month, we would absorb all stainless steel in the world. Doesn't that sound wild? Okay, we did the same thing when we did the McRib sandwich. Okay? We launched McRib, and we had projections on it. It went great. It went above projection. For 3 weeks, there were no pork bellies in the world. We consumed them. Okay? It's mind-boggling.
No more! There's no more!
Exactly.
We want more!
It's
We
weird.
want more!
It's a weird thing to get around. Okay, it's like because we have 34,000 locations, right? It's like boom, you know. So we have to be cognizant of that. So we only have so many resources for our deployment. But my whole point is make sure these things are paced correctly. Okay, because otherwise you end up with waste. Now, you have risk in that. So you want a rate here, and a rate here, and you want them to be aligned. If you are too slow here against this demand, you have risk. You're going to starve the pipeline versus the opposite. And I would be very careful up here, because the behavioral learnings that we have is that a lot of people like giving you their ideas, but they do not have the full context of the business. Okay? So if they say, I have a lot of people that I meet, especially on airplanes, who tell me about how they'd love it if we had, you know, a veggie burger. Okay? And I said, we did, and you didn't buy it, you know, but which is true. But moreover, it's like the idea of like, okay, someone focusing on one dimension of our system, okay, doesn't understand the interactions to the other parts of the system. And it takes that system, and it doesn't matter if you're McDonald's or not. It's just the fact that there's interaction there. So you can be a company that has minimal interaction or highly sensitive interaction. If I classify it that way, the higher the sensitivity to those interactions. Someone before talked about signal to noise, right? Similar concept. If you're in that genre, okay, then be careful up here, because you're going to get a bunch of ideas that will require you to process them against that. And what you're setting yourself up for is disappointment. And all those people who want a response, they want it minimally acknowledgement, right? And so there's a whole behavioral side of this, and we've experienced it. So maybe you don't have to, okay? Okay, I like these sayings. Good innovation, fill an existing need. There's some movie that I watched with my kids. I have kids that you saw. So it was like, see a need, fill a need. That's what it was. I wrote robots or something, Disneyland. That's a good innovation, okay? A great innovation is one that fulfills an altruistic passion. Now, I'll let you define altruistic, okay? So it doesn't have to be saving whatever, but I think that if, well, this is what we've learned. It's a journey, right? You have to sustain the journey. We've talked today about the entrepreneurial spirit, okay? If the passion and the motivation for that spirit is to make a lot of money, okay? I have personally witnessed several dozen people that have been chewed up and spit out by the McDonald's process because of that, okay? And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. But if the passion is, I want to do something good, and here's what I think good is, and I'm passionate about it, then they sustain, and they find that way. There's a real difference here, okay? So without being too preachy, my experience is that you still want to make money. Everybody does. So I'm not saying you don't make money. But the reason to be is for fulfilling that passion, okay? That's what's going to get you through all the hard knocks that are coming everybody's way, regardless of what it is, because it's not necessarily an easy journey. And those that make a lot of money really quickly, I tend to see it's not like winning the lottery. It doesn't necessarily turn out the best for them. So that's preachy one. Preachy two. Okay, closing thought two. Last one is, okay, and this is what I like about McDonald's. This is what you don't see. The philosophy of McDonald's, we spend a lot of time on social responsibility. Okay? I'll give you an example. When you eat French fries, there are no trans fatty acids in those fries anymore. Okay? It was a 3.5-year process to make that work. It was very difficult. Okay? Now we knew people didn't want trans fatty acids. We know that, right? But it was expensive for us to go through it. It was risky, right? Because what if you didn't like the taste of them, right? Just like you didn't like the taste of the veggie burger, or you didn't, candidly, want to eat a veggie burger. Really what it comes down to, because we've studied that too. We say we want to, but it's like I don't get on my treadmill as often as I would do either. You know what I mean? So there's a reality to some of this stuff, okay? And so what I like about McDonald's is, and what I feel good about McDonald's is, there's a lot of discussion and a lot of energy on this, okay? And we make decisions. We no longer have supersize. That's a lot of money, right? And why? Well, because, yeah, partly reputation and because of the movies, sure. Yeah, that brought it to the forefront. Get it. But the reason we did it, okay, was basically because we're trying to contribute, because we don't make, as consumers, good choices on portion size. And we did the right fact-based thing to say, portion size matters. It really does. So we offer only a large size. You can't get a super size anymore. Okay? Now, I will tell you that because I study these kind of things, a lot of people who previously bought the super size buy 2 larges, which is more food. Okay? That's their choice though, right? So well, we did our part. And in doing that, there's an immediate financial impact, right? That's where the money in the mouth is, kind of thing. So there's a lot that goes on here, but should we, just because we can? And the second real question is, do we take a disciplined approach to understanding the impact to the possible or likely behavior? Here's my example, okay? And I am biased. I showed you my bias when I turned on the screen. It's my 4 kids, okay? My daughter just celebrated her birthday. We had a daddy-daughter day. It was awesome. And the last thing we did was we went to get her phone, okay? Because she got straight A's, and we said if you got straight A's for 2 years, you could get a phone. You proved it to us. I swear, she has not stopped screaming and texting, you know, for days, right? She just, you know, it's amazing. But it's a moment, it's like, wow, it's really powerful. It's a really powerful thing in their lives. It's a connection to being relevant, okay, with your peers and with society, okay? So I look at this and I think, okay, so now they can get TV. And I'm worried about that. Why? Because they're not ready for it. Not TV. They're not ready to cross the street with TV in their hands. Right? And I'm afraid. I'm a dad, right? I don't want them to get hurt. And I don't want anybody else to get hurt. It's like, should we? Should we be offering Dora? Who's that? Right? What are we setting ourselves up for? What's the likely behavior? Okay? Now we're going to find out. It's like we text. I do it. You know, I don't have the right behavior, and I think I'm pretty smart, pretty, not irresponsible. But I swear, when this thing goes off, I'm compelled to see who just needed me while I'm driving. And I shouldn't, but I do. No, I'm not actively texting, but I am distracted. And I know when I'm traveling 65, 70 miles an hour, I don't have much luxury for being distracted because the statistics are all there. You know, I've got 3 seconds or I'm in an accident if an event's going to happen. And I just took a shot, right? So it's in all of us. And I'm just concerned about whether we have the discipline to think that through early on. And what is that discipline? How is it part of our processes? Okay? That's it. That's what I have for you. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I welcome any questions on the comments.
All right, round of applause. Nice done. Questions for Michael? Yes.
Just a comment, there's a cute video that came out South by Southwest last week about twittering while walking. And extolling the dangers of texting and twittering while walking. But it's a humorous video. I'm sure you can find it on the internet someplace.
Well, there are towns in the United Kingdom where they're actually padding the light posts as people are walking into them. I mean, so
That's actually manholes, right?
Well, I think it's interesting because, part of me says, hey, we're a free society, we get to choose and all that, and all that's really powerful. I also think that there's a long-term nature to things and a short-term nature. And we mentioned a couple examples, like we think about the dot-com era, and we jump on, right? It's fast, easy money, and then it crashes, okay? So, like, it's in us all. It just is. So and there can be laws and rules and all that. We don't want there to be. But there will be eventually when we can't control our behavior. So it's that unanswerable question is all I wanted to throw out there. Like, what should we do? How much should we self-regulate?
I had a quick question on the data gathering. Just
Sure.
curious, I know, say in Maine, you can get a lobster roll at McDonald's. So as you're doing this competition between regions and stores, is there any need to adjust for time to make a regional product to get it out the window? Or?
Yes, we do it in patches so that we don't have to deal with that. So the product mix is the same, but to your point, the type of drive-through, so if it's a single order point versus a tandem or a side-by-side, the flow rate is different. So the timing's different. So we did have to compensate for that.
Okay.
And here's maybe another interesting experience that we learned. So the first time we launched it, okay, it basically, this is sort of the rule of measurement, right? You get the behavior that you measure. And so most of this was about the times, okay? Your ranking was based on how fast, okay? But that was not our intent. Our intent was to get throughput. So it wasn't speed, it was throughput and customer experience. Well, we found behaviorally that what they did is they parked the cars because they could get them through the line. Well, we parked 20% of the cars. Well, that's not the intent that we had, right? But that's what we experienced. So it's like, oh, well, then we had to go back and add parking as part of the metric, right? And calibrate that behavior, okay? The competition still worked, and it was what drove the sustaining behavior, but we had to add more discipline to it because they went after it a certain way, Yeah.
I like your the competition thing. It's very similar to what we did with our markets, right? The whole point, I think, is it's fun.
Yes.
They don't really realize what's being measured, and they're having fun doing it, so they continue to do it, and that's a great thing. But my comment was about the pipeline and wasted innovation, don't waste. But I think for us, I think we treat it as an innovation pipeline, not just a pipeline, but it's a technology shelf. So the innovations that aren't able to go into the pipeline right now for timing reasons or whatever other reasons, they stay on that shelf, and at the time when they were ready, they're there. We don't have to sit there and wait, because you can't tell people, don't innovate today, tomorrow, not today. Or this year, not next year, that kind of
But no, the
thing.
interesting, go ahead, jump in.
Well, this is great because this is the debate that I had with Ken Koziel, okay? And because that was it's like, hey, we're going to load the shelves. I said, hey, let's go out to the warehouse. Do you pay for the warehouse? Yes, you do. You're paying for that. Now, that may not be wrong for you, but we at least have to acknowledge that's a cost. And what I've found is the same thing with the risk. It's really the opportunity cost. So if you focus their energy, which is what we want, right? We want to harness their energy, but focus it specifically on certain types of innovation. Exactly. Then you don't have to pay for the warehouse and you get all the benefits. There's a magic in there. I'm not saying we've got it.
There's balance.
We've learned the hard way that we stocked the shelves big. We filled the big warehouse, and it's like, and we got our customers coming back and saying, well, you're not so relevant because, my needs are very specific.
Because it's throughput, because for you, innovation really does, because it happens, it's real when it's deployed.
Exactly. It's not worth anything until then, right? Until we've made
Right.
consumers happier or made money on it. So. Anyway, but I like it. When you were doing this, I was thinking about this. In fact, it's one of the reasons I made the slide. Because I see it. And it's like, well, we experienced that, but we didn't see it. When we were doing it, we were jazzed, And you've done some really exciting things. You've tapped a different kind of energy, in a crowd way and all that. And that's really neat. I just think that harnessing it is it's maybe your next phase, Yeah.
Have you done any analysis on where the best ideas come from, or the ideas that we deploy the most, either geographically or from the ranks, or do you have any idea?
It's interesting. We're a little arrogant and myopic that way. So ours are the best that come from the Innovation Center.
I have the data to prove it.
Honestly, that's the answer. I think I am sort of embarrassed to say that, but what we'll find is like the Australians. There's 762 stores on that island, right? And because they're out there by themselves, and because they had leadership for a long time that inspired them to be innovative, they still are. Okay? Charlie Bell was their leader, and he became CEO, and then he passed away, unfortunately. And they never stopped. Okay? So they invent stuff brashly, right? And we learn a lot from them. Okay? But it's it's still a real company with real people and real bureaucracy, and so if they come up with an idea, we don't welcome them with open arms all the time. That's the human side of some things. I think we're getting better that way. Everyone sort of fights for their turf and protecting their budgets, but that whole dimension is still there, and we're experiencing it.
Can an owner-operator introduce an innovation without corporate approval?
They can introduce it and test it, they can't scale it.
So I can sell two, or I can't?
That means, so if you did it in your restaurants, that's okay, but you can't give it to other people. Now, there's owner-operators that have 50, 60 restaurants, so they can do some pretty significant testing, and that's fine, it's on their dime. The thing that bothers me about that is, usually the people, this is where I give the warning to the entrepreneurial side, that owner-operator is a very sharp businessman, okay? They have to be, especially if they own that many restaurants. They're very sharp. So there's probably something went down in the conversation, maybe not specifically, but implied, that said, wow, there's thousands and thousands of restaurants at McDonald's. You do this, and look what your opportunity could be, okay? That picture gets a lot of people very excited. And with that excitement, sometimes they lose sight of the fact that we're a penny profit business, and you don't make money overnight with us. Very rarely has that happened. There are thousands of examples where it hasn't, and a dozen where it has. And the dozen, half of them happened when Ray Kroc shook hands. So unfortunately, it gets to bittersweet engagement where we end up saying, hey, because there's been some great ideas, but they just haven't been thought of in terms of how that would scale. And we have to scale it, We have to scale the infrastructure for it to be manageable. Otherwise, we have way too many one-off versions, and we already lived through that. So that's the problem with it from that perspective. The entrepreneurs get a little glassy-eyed and, wide-eyed, wow, look at this, and it's good for the owner-operator. We love the passion of it, but it has to go through a lot of rigor, and they typically don't understand that up front, and so they get resentful or bitter at the end. Yeah.
Did your DOE models turn up any surprises or counterintuitive results? Did you have assumptions that were incorrect?
Tons, both ways. One is, so we always check back if we're getting an answer that doesn't make sense with our subject matter experts and or with what we've studied from the field, the video. And sometimes it's like, hey, you got a programming bug, right? Or you got a setting that's wrong, okay? But then the opposite is true too, just myths that the subject matter experts believe to still be true. And all it comes down to is their experience and their wisdom was based on a certain set of conditions. And under those conditions, it's true. In fact, I spend quite a bit of my time when I'm introducing these kind of methods, tools to them, to make sure I know them. I'll ask people about them and basically demonstrate their belief. And then step up the conditions and say, now look, that resonates well, because then they have trust in it's just a tool, right? But it's an important thing because we're relying on it for information. So it's been an interesting journey that way, because we're not an analytically oriented company.
So were some of the rollouts that you did based on this scary because of the scale?
I would say that the majority of what we're rolling out now, okay, is proven to be low risk, highly scalable, highly desirable. So we have desirability, viability, feasibility are the three main screens, okay? And inside of those, you can talk about popularity.
Because these aren't beta, remember? I mean, one, they've simulated, and then you do testing in certain, not a statistically significant set of restaurants. Because these are kind of a slam dunk. I mean, by the time you guys go to scale,
Yeah.
I mean, you are
It's
pretty
in
ready.
Australia. I mean, it's not coming out of Australia. We're now just making adjustments for it to go, and it's in the U.S., and we're testing it for adjustment purposes there.
The way I would represent it is what you have done is because it's hard to test drive an organizational change, but you've actually created, if you will, a change management, if you will, spreadsheet. I mean, because you've reduced as much risk as is possibly reducible where you're dealing with carbon-based life forms. I mean, it's really, I think it's a great way.
Well, and I wish I could say that we did that all in, foresight, but I've already told you that we built a big engine, right? An engine that was too big for the need. So we want to protect our budgets. So, and I'm not saying this because it's malicious, it's not, but we're taking it to the next level of detail. I work on a restaurant-specific basis. I do 34,000. No, I classify them, but there's a lot of classifications. And why? Because I know that's better than if I take, a general classification, okay? And because we have the bandwidth and the time, we can do that. I'm really psyched about that. But, you see, it's not because that's what we said we wanted to do from the beginning. We made lemonade.
Well, we're going to have to get you to, the airport. So that's a round of applause for Mike. Thanks, Mike.